You were the one who learned to read the room before you learned to read books. The one who knew which footsteps meant danger and which ones meant you could breathe again. And somewhere in all that listening, all that watching, all that figuring out how to be small enough to be safe and big enough to protect someone else, you stopped being a child. Not because you wanted to, because you had to. And now you're here. However old you actually are, carrying decades you never lived through. Feeling like you've already been tired for longer than you've been alive. People talk about old souls like it's a compliment. Like you were born wise, born deep, born with some special access to understanding. But that's not what this is. This isn't about being born with anything. This is about what got built in you when childhood wasn't safe enough to stay soft. When you had to grow eyes in the back of your head and a calculator in your chest that measured risk before you even knew what risk meant. There's a weight to it. Not the kind people see. The kind that lives in your shoulders when you're alone. The kind that makes you feel like you've been running a race nobody else is even aware of, and you're already at mile 20 while everyone around you is still stretching at the starting line. And the most confusing part? You can't even remember when the race started. Just that you've been running for as long as you can remember. Here's the thing about feeling older than you are. It doesn't show up like you'd expect. It's not about liking old music or preferring quiet nights. It's about the way you move through the world like someone who's already been disappointed and is just waiting to see how this time will confirm it. It's about the exhaustion that sits behind your eyes even after a full night's sleep. It's about relating more to your parents' generation than your own, not because you're mature, but because you've been living with the same weariness they spent 30 extra years earning. You were the kid who parented yourself. Or parented a parent. Or parented a sibling because nobody else was going to. You were the one who learned to pack your own lunch and sign your own permission slips and make doctor's appointments while your friends were still asking their moms to cut the crusts off their sandwiches. You were the one who became fluent in adult problems before you had the language for your own feelings. And you probably did it well. That's the part nobody tells you. You probably became so good at it that people didn't even notice you were a child doing adult work. They just thought you were capable, responsible, mature for your age. And you wore that like armor because at least it meant you were useful. At least it meant you mattered in some measurable way. But capability isn't the same as readiness. And just because you could do it doesn't mean you should have had to. There's research out of the University of Minnesota that looked at parentification in children, this process of role reversal where kids take on caregiving responsibilities that should belong to adults. And what they found wasn't just that it happened. It was how it rewired development. Children who became their family's emotional infrastructure showed accelerated cognitive development in some areas, yes. But they also showed something else. A kind of developmental telescoping, where they leapfrogged over the stages that build trust, that build play, that build the belief that the world might actually be safe enough to relax in. They went straight from dependency to hyper-independence without passing through the middle part where you learn that needing people is okay. So now you're an adult who knows how to handle a crisis but doesn't know how to handle a compliment. Who can solve everyone else's problems but feels fundamentally confused by your own needs. Who can carry the weight of the world but feels like you're drowning under the weight of asking for help. And people wonder why you feel old. You learned survival before you learned softness. That's not the same as strength. That's just what happens when strength is the only option you're given. Because here's what nobody explains when they're praising you for being so independent, so put together, so capable. They don't explain that you're not independent by choice. You're independent by necessity. You're not put together because everything's fine. You're put together because falling apart was never an option you could afford. And the capability they admire? That's not confidence. That's control. That's the thing you grip onto when everything else feels like it might collapse. You carry hypervigilance like a second skeleton. Always scanning. Always preparing. Always 3 steps ahead of the disaster you're certain is coming because in your experience, it usually does. Other people get to walk into rooms and just exist in them. You walk into rooms and immediately map the exits, read the energy, calculate who needs what, figure out how to make yourself useful or invisible depending on what the moment requires. You don't get to be spontaneous. You don't get to be reckless. You don't get to trust that things will work out because your entire life has been evidence that things only work out if you make them work out. So you stay ready. You stay sharp. You stay exhausted. And the exhaustion is the part you can't explain to people who didn't live this. It's not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. It's the kind of tired that comes from spending your whole life braced for impact. From never fully relaxing because relaxing feels like giving up your only defense. From carrying the belief that if you let your guard down for even a second, everything you've worked to hold together will fall apart. You feel older because you've been holding it together longer than most people have been aware there was anything to hold. And then there's the success part. The achievement part. The part where you've built something, accomplished something, proven something, and it still doesn't feel like enough. Because when you had to earn your worth before you even understood what worth was, success stops being about celebration and starts being about continued proof. Proof that you deserve to take up space. Proof that you're not a burden. Proof that you matter beyond your usefulness. So you achieve and you achieve and you achieve, and people are impressed, and you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel like a fraud. Like you're one mistake away from everyone realizing you're not actually as capable as they think. Like the exhaustion is going to catch up with you and expose the truth that you're just someone who learned to perform competence really well, but inside you're still that kid who had no idea what they were doing, just that they had to do it anyway. You became an expert at reading people before you ever learned to read yourself. You can sense when someone's upset from across a room. You can tell when the energy shifts, when someone needs something, when you're about to be needed. And you respond. Automatically. Without even thinking about it. Because that's what you were trained to do. Manage the emotional climate. Keep things stable. Make sure everyone else is okay. But who's making sure you're okay? Who's reading your energy? Who's noticing when you're the one who's struggling? Probably nobody. Because you learn to hide it so well that even you don't always know when you're not okay until you're completely falling apart. And even then, you'll probably apologize for it. Say you're fine. Say it's not a big deal. Say you just need a minute and then you'll be back to handling everything like you always do. The relationships are where it gets complicated. Because you're attracted to people who need you. Not because you're codependent in the traditional sense, but because being needed is the only way you learn that connection works. So you find people who are struggling, who are chaotic, who are falling apart, and you become their stability. You become the one who fixes, who saves, who holds it all together. And it feels like love because it feels familiar. But then you wake up one day and realize you're exhausted again. That you've built another relationship where you're the adult and they're the child. And you're 25 or 35 or 45, and you're still playing the same role you were playing at 8. Still earning your place. Still proving you deserve to stay. And the people who are actually stable, actually healthy, actually capable of meeting you halfway, they feel boring, or suspicious, or like they're going to figure out that you're too much, too intense, too damaged, and leave. So you don't even try. You stick with what you know. You stick with chaos because at least you know how to navigate chaos. Peace feels like a trap you can't afford to fall into. You feel older because you never got to learn that relationships could be something other than work. That love could be something other than service. That your value could exist outside of what you provide. And the loneliest part is that nobody really gets it. Your friends talk about their problems, and they're real problems. You're not dismissing that. But they also had parents who helped them solve their problems. They had safety nets. They had room to fail and figure it out and try again. You had yourself. Just yourself. So when they complain about things that feel small to you, you have to remember that their small is different from your small because their scale was calibrated differently. You can't explain that you've been navigating adult emotional territory since you were in elementary school without sounding like you're competing for who had it worse. And you're not. You don't want to compete. You just want someone to understand that you're tired in a way that predates your memory. That you've been old for longer than you've been young. You're grieving something you can't name. It's not just the childhood you didn't get to have. It's the version of yourself you never got to meet. The one who got to be careless. The one who got to trust that adults would handle adult things. The one who got to develop at a pace that matched their age instead of at a pace determined by crisis. And maybe that person still exists somewhere inside you. Maybe they're not gone, just buried under years of responsibility and vigilance and performance. Maybe part of the work now is letting that kid finally rest. Letting them know that the danger has passed, even if your body hasn't caught up to that information yet. Letting them know that they did enough. That they were always enough. That they don't have to earn their existence anymore. You're not broken. You're not damaged beyond repair. You're not too old to change. You're just someone who had to grow up in a way that cost you the softness you deserved. And now you're here, trying to figure out how to be both the adult you had to become and the child you never got to be. Trying to find room for both the strength and the grief. Trying to believe that maybe, just maybe, you can put some of this weight down. Because you were never supposed to carry all of this alone. You were never supposed to become old before your time. You were supposed to have space to be young, to be messy, to be held. And you didn't get that. And that's not fair. And it's okay to be angry about it. It's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to still be working through it, no matter how many years it's been. What would it mean to let yourself be young now? Even just for a moment. Even just in the quiet of your own room where nobody's watching. What would it feel like to play without purpose? To rest without earning it? To exist without justifying your existence? If this found something true in you, stay here a little longer. There's more to say about what happens when old wounds meet new possibilities.